Cue cards. You see them everywhere. Classroom presentations, boardroom meetings, and the list goes on. And the reason we see them all the time is because of this general advice that we tend to get on them, which is the following. Well, I mean, if you don't write out your speech in full, I guess it's okay to bring your cue cards as long as you only write bullet points. And it's because of this reason that we see cue cards in almost every single presentation. And it's also for this reason that in this week's episode of Master Talk, I'm going to be giving you 3 reasons why cue cards ruin presentations. Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Brendan from Master Talk here, your go-to channel to mastering your talk. And today we're talking cue cards, so let's get into it. One caveat I want to give before presenting my tips is that cue cards are only okay if you're an absolute beginner speaker and you're extremely afraid of getting on stage. Then in those situations, it's fine. But remember, cue cards are training wheels and not something even average speakers should be using. Number 1, the barrier. Cue cards create a barrier between yourself, the presenter, and the audience you're presenting to. Take the following example. Let's say I'm telling a story and there's 3 key points to my story and I forgot the 3rd point and I have these papers. This is what happens. You present the first point with your audience, you present the 2nd point with your audience, and this happens. Notice what just happened there. It created a barrier between myself and you, the person who's watching this video. Because if you're not looking at your audience directly, you can't build a relationship, a connection with that audience. And these pesky papers serve as a barrier to hinder the amazing connection you've built with your audience. So my point here is simple. You're better off scrapping the last point and just saying the first 2 points of that story to your audience without cue cards than saying all 3 points with them. Because in the situation where you only say the second one, the first 2, then it's similar to a dance routine because nobody knows what the actual dance routine looks like, the audience that's watching it. That's why dance teachers always recommend that if you fall in a dance routine, just get back up and keep dancing because your audience won't know what the routine is. Presentations work in the exact same way. Your audience doesn't know what you're going to present. So if you give them any hint that you don't know what you're saying by looking at your cue cards, then you lose credibility. And more importantly, you create a barrier that you shouldn't be creating in the first place. Number 2, it unteaches the right things. With cue cards, especially in the context of many of the tips I give, let's explore those tips in the lens of how we use cue cards. More specifically, I want to focus on 2 things: silences and eye contact. In eye contact, we learned that you should always keep your eye either on the audience or your slides. And no other circumstances should you look anywhere else unless you have a prop. But looking anywhere else, besides those 2 points, reduces the relationship and the connection that you have with your audience. Cue cards ruin that effect because whenever I'm looking at my cue card, I create a new relationship that shouldn't exist. Because whenever I look here, I'm not looking at my slide and I'm not looking at my audience. So you feel disconnected from me. The same rule applies for silences. We learned that silences are used as a weapon to enhance our presentations and to make them better. But if we pause and we look at our cue card, well, it kind of ruins the effect. That's why it's important to ditch these and present with silences without this support, so that you can enhance your presentations. And finally, number 3, there's just better tools you can leverage for the exact same result. Much like cue cards, there's other support tools that you can use in presentations that deliver the same effect. The best example being a PowerPoint presentation. Whenever you give a PowerPoint presentation, they serve as a support that you can look at whenever you don't know what to say next. But the more important thing with PowerPoints is you can still keep the relationship and connection with your audience while still having those PowerPoints. I'll give an example. Let's say I forget what I want to say next and I have PowerPoint slides. Instead of panicking or looking away from my audience, what I do is the following. I take my hand, I move it towards the slide as I keep eye contact with my audience, and then I look back at the slide, I look at what's on the slide, and then I tell them what I'm gonna say next. But notice how I'm directing my audience towards the slide and I'm still with them. Whereas with cue cards, the issue is that 100% of the time, your audience will know when you're looking at them. Whereas when you use slides and you direct them towards the slide, your audience thinks, oh wow, Brendan is just showing us the next thing in his presentation. He's not looking at his slide, he's just directing us towards something important. In other words, what I'm trying to say is there's absolutely no reason besides being a beginner speaker to use these pesky little pieces of paper. So get rid of them. As always, if you enjoyed this week's episode of Master Talk, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well to see more videos like this. And I'll leave you off on this note. If you know anyone that uses cue cards, and I'm sure you do, be sure to send them this video so that they'll be one step closer to mastering their talk. Take care, everyone. Have a fantastic week and see you next time on Master Talk.